And let's see, Deacon Mitzie Schafer, it's time for you to speak to us and challenge us once again. Thank you.
Happy Tuesday. So I'm going to go off script here for just a second to get us started back together. First, to just point out and acknowledge all of the lovely ministry deposits that the Synod shared with us this morning. Story after story after story about how your generosity is transforming lives. So thank you, Synod, for that. Synod. And second, I've had a lot of folks coming up and talking and asking questions, which I love and appreciate. But I do want to clarify just one thing about deposits and withdrawals. So when I talk about deposits and making deposits in the congregation, I want to be clear that I'm talking about the leadership of the church. The leadership of the church, the council, staff, making deposits into the lives of our members, who then make deposits out into the world. What I don't want us to do is think about how our members make deposits to us, okay? So I've had a couple fuzzy comments along the way about that, and so I do want to make it really clear that when I talk about deposits, I mean the leadership of the church making deposits into the lives of our people, okay? So I told you yesterday, I warned you that our topic for today, our entire session, is one big action step, and you will likely want pen and paper to be able to take notes. And if you decide as a congregation or as leadership inside the congregation to take action with some of the things that I've been sharing with you, evaluating your communication and beginning to tell impact stories, first off, kudos. I'm super excited and proud of you for doing that. But also, I want to make sure with today's presentation that you know, don't bury the stories. Real big across the top of your paper. Don't bury the stories. When I say that 80% of church communication that I review is withdrawal language, it isn't simply about the content or the words that are being shared. It's also about the method of communication, how we share that information. In fundraising, in development work, we say there are 4 steps. We must inform, inspire, ask, and thank. Inform, inspire, ask, and thank. In general, information and asking are withdrawals. Inspiring and thanking are deposits. This also works when we're recruiting volunteers, this same 4 steps: inform, inspire, ask, and thank. When we think about the Christmas caroling story, inspiration was the deposit there. It didn't actually take a lot of information to get people there. We ask people in our churches for a lot. We ask them to come to worship, to lecture, to usher, to give money, to count money, to prepare meals, to teach Sunday school, to help with the youth, to serve on council, and on and on. These aren't bad things to be asking for if impact is happening as a result of doing them. But because we do so much asking, we have to be intentional about inspiring and thanking as well. In a nonprofit, when someone gives a gift, we write a thank you note. I don't actually know a lot of churches who write thank you notes for regular giving. We send end of the year statements. Not the same thing. The good news is we can add more deposits in our congregations simply by sharing more gratitude. But again, the biggest deposit we can make is inspiring people, helping people realize that their generosity of financial resources and time are actually transforming lives. So let's talk about logistics of inspiring and telling impact stories. Most church communication I see consists of bulletin announcements, an e-news or a weekly email, whatever you call it, Facebook posts, and websites. We've adopted this model that actually comes from a for-profit world. In our e-news, we have a little picture, a title, an excerpt, and a button. And a little picture, and a title, and an excerpt, and a button. And it goes on. And the button's job is to send us somewhere to read more or to RSVP. And when we do that, well, for-profit companies, they actually want us to buy something. They want to get you to their website. They don't want you to spend a lot of time in an email, because the more time you spend on their website, the more likely you are to put something in that little cart up in the top right corner. There are people in our church who are busy moms. Getting an email that makes you have to go through layer and layer and layer of information means that something gets lost. Someone interrupts them, they get distracted, they get a phone call. Maybe they just don't have their calendar in front of them when they get their weekly e-news to write everything down that they're supposed to be responsible for. And when it comes at them like that, it's a withdrawal. They don't actually get the information that we want them to have or that we need them to have. Every time we create a situation where people have to click to go somewhere else, statistically there will be drop-off. And we lose people simply because of the way that we give them the information. It might not be that they don't care. It might be that their brains just can't absorb anything else. We called that COVID fog in our house. I don't know what y'all called it. But if you start writing stories, when you start writing stories, if you bury them in your e-news, you will greatly diminish their impact. They will be lost. I have congregations that send in e-news as clients, and when I tell them to put their stories in a separate email, don't bury them. Create sacred space for them on the first Thursday of the month, as an example. Nothing else ever goes with the story. I always get pushback. But that will mean another email, and people hate getting email. People hate swimming through emails. People hate getting content that they have to open to figure out what it is. They hate getting content that isn't relevant to them. And they hate being asked over and over and over when a relationship gets pulled down to transactional. But you know what they love? They love to be inspired. That's why we love the stories. The for-profit world has an average 17% open rate for marketing emails that their subscribers actually say they want. They sign up for them and say they want them, but they still only have a 17% open rate. Fun fact, church open rates are higher than the for-profit world. Something we do better than them. It's good, right? What my churches tell me is that their e-news has an average 30% open rate. But their news story emails consistently perform 30% better than their e-news. Because people know what they're getting, and consistency is a deposit, and giving people content in a consistent fashion is a deposit into the relationship. You're building expectation and trust and transparency, and they know that if they open that story email, they're gonna feel good about their church. And after meetings on Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays, they start thinking about the weekend. And what happens on the weekend? Worship, church. If their church sends them an inspiring email with a story about what God is up to, and they open it on Thursday, it carries them into the weekend, and they've got church on their heart and on their mind. So don't bury the stories. And don't simply just share them in email, because you have two primary audiences. First, you have an internal audience, the people who are in your system or your sphere of communication. If you have an email for them, they're in somehow. But inside of that internal audience, you have different kinds of people. You have older people who maybe don't have email. You have younger families running all over the place who only need the content that affects them directly. In my husband Jason's congregation, we have confirmation and youth families. We also have a gals group, a grief and loss sisters. They don't need the same information. Maybe the gals want to see what the youth are doing, but let's show them what the youth are doing through a story. And those young families certainly don't have time to weed through all the information for the gals. Give your different internal audiences what they need, and it will be a deposit into the relationship. You also have an external audience. We want to know why new people don't come. And often I hear congregations blaming the seeker for not coming. They don't care about God. They don't care about the church. For-profit companies pay billions of dollars to get their attention and our attention. Their messages are visually pleasing, well-crafted, and well-targeted. The church doesn't advertise. Maybe it feels weird to us, but it shouldn't. If for-profit companies who test their markets and hone their messages for specific audiences recognize the value of advertising, we actually have something to learn from that. It's not the field of dreams. But even without advertising, when the Spirit nudges someone toward a faith community, the first thing they do these days is Google churches near me. And when they open up your website and land on your front page, they need to know 3 things right away. And you, friends, have 7 seconds to show them. 7 seconds. On the front page of your website, any seeker needs to know if they can belong there. We like to say that all are welcome, but they need to know if we really mean it. People have been hurt and burned by the church. And maybe not your particular church, but church is global and corporate in their minds. We need to show them immediately if they can belong, fully and wholly as they are. Tell them they belong in a way they can believe it, and show them with a picture. In the second section of your website, do they need to have an ultra secret handshake and come in the back door to find you? Do they need to follow signs to get through some kind of complicated maze? Churches are fortresses. From the outside looking in or driving by, they are intimidating spaces. The second section on your website needs to help break down that intimidation. They want to know if people are going to look at them funny or ignore them or pounce on them because, oh my gosh, you actually have a kid, or give you the stink eye because your kid is too noisy. And third, they need to see that your church is making a difference. Relevance. They need to hear that the thing missing in their life, the before the change that is causing them to seek you out, will be found there. And a church resume will never convince a seeker that they can belong. A list of programs is a church resume. But hearing from Stacy that she felt alone and that her daughter had a mental health crisis and that the church buoyed her up and that they provided a net under her family will convince them. Impact stories are what you need on the front page of your website. The people in your church need to also know that they are relevant, and the people outside need to know it too. So don't bury the stories. On the same day that you send an email with a story in it, put the full story on your Facebook page. If you're not paying for the product, meaning you're not paying for ads on Facebook, you are the product. And Facebook's job is to make people money. And so the people paying for ads get first priority. People who have posts that get attention and get comments and get likes and get shares get priority because their job is to make money. And so if your content isn't engaging, you're automatically moved to the bottom. I can look through church Facebook pages. I follow all my clients, and their worship services that they're posting from their videos, 2 or 3 likes. Their stories in the 50s and 60s. Because once it starts, it gains momentum. So the day that you send it in your email, put the full story on your Facebook page and on your website. So new, fresh stories are showing up on the front page of your website in that 3rd section every single time you post one. Tell the story, and in doing so, you will be telling God's greatest story of welcome and belonging and grace. So I recognize this is a lot of content. Take pieces that feel doable in the immediate and start there. I don't want you to feel bad about not being able to do it all of a sudden. That's not going to get you anywhere. Take what you feel good about, what you feel like you can do successfully, and start there. Work on building deposits as a congregation by adding inspiration and gratitude. Begin minimizing withdrawals and be open to the Spirit's deposits that lead and propel you. We are more than the world believes us to be these days. We are more than we believe ourselves to be these days. The church is still relevant, but it is up to us to make that relevance known to the world. It is up to us to tell the story. Neil, if you would share that website, please, sir. This is my website. I've worked to add some resources for you there. I'm going to talk you through what's there now. So, first, under the Assembly tab is where you'll find the content from the other day, the evaluation tool that I talked about on whatever day that was, Sunday. Under the Resource tab, there is now a sample front page church website that has those 3 pieces that I just talked about, so you can refer back to that and get a sense for what I'm saying. There's also a podcast that you can listen to. Episode 7 is actually specifically about impact storytelling. I invite you to share that with your councils. People who aren't here in leadership in your congregation who need some inspiration and encouragement to kind of everybody be on the same train. And there's also a link there for how to share images as well. Because again, people paying money to advertise on Facebook are using good photography. And photography is the first window into somebody wanting to engage in something on social media. Thank you. Thank you for your time and for your attention these last 3 days. Thanks for coming up and talking to me and sharing comments and asking questions. It means a lot to me. This is my synod. I love my church, I love my ELCA, but I love my synod, and so I appreciate your time. Thank you.